Patel from Philadelphia, USA, started his career as a US Air Force Space Systems Operations Specialist. And experience includes military space lift operations, technical writing, software development, SRE, DevOps engineering, and so much more. The talk today is on securing JavaScript and CI/CD pipelines. That's continuous integration and continuous delivery. Most CI/CD pipelines use DevOps teams, utilize integration with services such as APIs, databases, and other critical systems to complete their workflows. These integrations usually require the use of extremely sensitive data like secrets such as passwords, tokens, certificates, and so on. But they must be stored securely and protected at all times. Unauthorized access of these pipeline secrets open these systems to threats from bad actors and illegal access of data. In this talk, Anhil will discuss common pain points in properly securing your application and the CI and CD pipeline. You will all learn the strategies to secure your application, sensitive data, pipeline integration points, and so much more. Enough from me. Let's head over to Anhil. I really look forward to hearing more about this talk because it is so important and something that often gets overlooked. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Eddie, for that intro. And I want to welcome everyone to this talk today. But I do want to caveat this talk, although, it's a JavaScript conference, this talk is going to focus mainly on how to secure pipelines, regardless of stack, right? Since this is a JavaScript conference, just wanted to kind of clarify that for folks. So here's a quick agenda into what I'm going to be talking about today. Quick introduction to who I am, what I do at CircleCI, and then talking about software development life cycles as they relate to continuous integration, continuous delivery, and also talking about Devsecops and pipeline integrations, and finally just discussing how you can secure your pipelines. So before we get started, my name is Angel RIVERA. I'm a developer advocate for CircleCI, and I essentially engage with the community, ensure that I understand how people are using technology and some of the struggles that they're having with said technologies. And what I also do is bring that information back to our teams at CircleCI so that we can build features that bring value to our developers. So in a nutshell, that's what I do. Pretty much a lot of gripping and grinning pre-COVID, attended a lot of conferences, probably met a few of you in person, and hopefully post-COVID, we'll be able to do that all again in the future. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, post-conference or during the conference, feedback on this talk, just hit me up on Twitter is the best way to get a hold of me these days. And my Twitter handle is @punkdata. So let's get started. Before I begin, talking about DevSecops, security, pipelines, I kind of want to do a little bit of a time travel, a little bit of time travel back into history, right? So, and I want to talk about like kind of a very, very brief history of software development, at least the way I experienced it when I was coming up in the industry. So I'm going to focus in on software development practices, right? The way that we build software. And when I started building software, many, many years ago, I kind of came into the industry when we were practicing, or when waterfall software development processes or methodologies were pretty much dominating, right? The way we built software. And if you don't know what waterfall really is, it's essentially a software development methodology or practice where things are tied together, right? They're dependent on each other. So when you're developing software in a waterfall environment, you're going to basically get a big block of tasks to do. And a lot of the times, people on your teams will also get the similar tasks, right? The problem is with waterfall is it's a cascading kind of process. So let's say myself and someone else is working on a project. If my teammate has some processes or software they need to develop that that are kind of precursors to what I'm doing, there's a dependency there, right? So immediately I have already been blocked by these tasks that need to be, created or completed before I can begin development. So as you can see from this diagram, right, if you look in that box there, right, you have some low-level design requirements, and then those are doled out into tasks, and then they follow up, right, with the process of coding. So all of these processes basically are dependent upon each other, and obviously the previous steps or tasks have to be completed before we can continue on. As you could imagine, this is pretty inefficient, right? But at the time, that was kind of all people had at the, and we also recognize that it was inefficient. So moving forward, we're engineers, right? We figured out that, hey, this is not optimal. So we made it optimal, right? Folks had, basically created a new way of doing things, more efficient way of developing software. And we named it agile development. So if you look at the agile diagram, you can see there's a lot of movement, right? There's no kind of blocking, cascading kind of effect with this process. If you look in the center of this diagram, you can see there's a couple of icons of people, right? And that's pretty instrumental to the way software is developed under this methodology. And the main point with agile development is you can basically break those large tasks from waterfall methodologies into smaller, more manageable tasks, right? And when you break them into smaller tasks, you're able to give them, basically assign them to different people, and they can be completed at the same time. So what you're doing is breaking those dependencies, right, that existed in the waterfall development. Now, of course, right, there's going to be dependencies. I'm not saying get rid of all of them, but get rid of the ones that you can get rid of, right, and break those tasks out into more manageable, smaller chunks. And then, as you can see, right, there's a lot of movement here. If you see the arrows, there's a lot of sprint planning on the side. There's some daily scrum, so people are getting updated and sending that code, status of the code to the team. So pretty much, again, everything's broken out into more of a cascading way of building software, or a parallel concurrency, right? We're building things at the same time, and obviously that's going to create some speed and velocity in completing those tasks. And delivering that code faster. So we actually learned, after implementing this agile development, there's patterns, right? So after the agile development process was adopted, we actually realized that same concurrency pattern, right, that was formed can be applied to the way we also automate our builds and deliver our software. And that's where kind of continuous delivery was born, right? Same kind of process where you're building pipelines to essentially automate the delivery of your software. And from continuous delivery, we formed even more, deeper patterns and practices and principles in the form of CI/CD, or continuous integration and continuous deployment. So this actually ties, CI/CD actually ties really, really nicely with DevOps. So if you're not familiar with DevOps, it's basically again, practice and principle where developers and operations are eliminating those artificial barriers that existed before kind of DevOps was coined. If you developed any software probably in the past 10 years, you've probably experienced where the development shop has to do their work. And then once they compile, finish updating their code, it kind of gets thrown over the wall to the operations teams, and they handle deploying it and releasing it to the public, right? So with DevOps, the concept here is, you are a developer, there's operations teams, but you should be working in tandem. And that's where this kind of DevOps, I call this the DevOps infinity loop, starts, right? But if we jump into the continuous integration principles, right? Again, these are just principles. What I'm talking about here is, these are some of the key elements to the principles. Developers are writing and committing code as often as possible, and they're committing to a shared repository, which in turn should be tested, right? That code should be tested on every commit. And the benefits or the results that you get from continuous integration is a fast feedback loop, right? So what's going on with your code in incremental changes. This is very useful for developers so that they can manage their time better, understand what's happening with their code before, there's some huge problems down the road. So again, it's just basically checking in on your code, at very short intervals. Now, when we're talking about the principles of continuous deployment, what you're doing essentially is creating these release artifacts, right, for your deployment processes. And obviously, you're going to deploy those artifacts, right, to resources. This gives you the opportunity to validate the applications and services and ensure that they're functioning in the target environments that you're deploying to. It's very important that we understand that when you're deploying software, just because you deployed it successfully to an environment doesn't mean it's actually functioning the way you intended. And then obviously, right, you can leverage observability tools or to monitor and verify the state of your application once it's deployed. And there could be some recovery type processes as well that you can implement. So what I talked about previous to the slide is all about practices and principles, right? And when you have practices and principles, you have to bring those things to life. And the only way you can really do that in software is by leveraging automation, right? You have to automate those processes. With the automation though, right, that's where kind of CI/CD pipelines come into play. And what I'm showing you here is an example of a CI/CD pipeline that exists from one of my projects on Circle CI. Circle CI is a CI/CD platform, which again brings your CI/CD principles and pipelines to life, right? It actually executes code based off of your CI/CD defined pipelines. So as you can see here, right, there's a lot of things happening. And take note, on the left-hand side of the screen, you have like 3 blocks of jobs, right? These are just things that need to be executed in a pipeline. And they're being executed concurrently, right? Again, kind of with that agile flow. I just wanted to call that out because the way that you are agile and you gain speed in your release cycles is by performing things and getting your automation to perform things optimally. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. All right, so kind of covered practices and principles, DevOps, CI/CD. Let's talk about Devsecops and pipeline integrations. So with Devsecops, right, when I started developing software, I started where, like, this is kind of where the pipeline looked like, right? So if the automation, take a snapshot of something maybe in, I don't know, 2000, year 2000, Y2K, right? You had this kind of pipeline. And if you notice here, we have this concept, right, of shifting security left. I don't know if you've heard that term thrown around, or if you don't understand it. But basically what happens is, again, look at disregard. Wow. All right, let's start over. Gotta love these live shows. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. All right, so shifting left with security. Let's go ahead and focus in on the scan for vulnerabilities, right? So this is an automated job in the pipeline that essentially does some sort of security scan. Now, that position where it was previously in the pipeline, right, is where it created problems, because as developers, right, and pre the DevOps kind of movement, security teams would wait to the end, right, to kind of scan the software and ensure that there's no vulnerabilities. And if there were vulnerabilities, then the issue would be they would mitigate, right? So if it was a dependency problem, we didn't really have, as developers, I would say the knowledge or the tooling, right, to help fix those issues. The tooling generally remained with the security teams because it was their responsibility. With DevSecOps, right, and the shift security left concept, you're basically wiring up your security practices with automation tools, right? So that gives you, the developer, the ability to be more involved in the security of the software. So that's why I kind of shifted that security scan left for you, so that you could understand that just basically a movement from where things are sitting towards the end of your pipeline, and it's moved to the front of your pipeline, and that gives the ability for more people to get involved in those processes. And again, this is all made possible because of a really, really cool tooling, security type tooling that it's focusing on developers and empowering them to actually take part in the security aspects of their software. So you're basically, empowering your engineers and your software developers to, take care of security type issues ahead of time before the security team even gets to them. So the idea there would be the security team just validates that the artifact that you're deploying is nice and clean, vulnerability free, or as vulnerability free as possible. So I hope that was a pretty informative explanation of shifting security left. But let's go ahead and jump into how that relates to integrating security actions into your pipelines. Because, right, we're talking about pipelines. So again, talking about developers being able to, implement security scans within their pipelines and in the context of their actual, responsibilities within that pipeline. We have the ability now to, scan the applications using for vulnerabilities using tooling. And it's easy to use tooling that's kind of developer centric. There's a couple of companies out there. I think a person gave a talk before me. His company is really, really cool, and they're actually doing the good work that I'm talking about here. And that gives you the ability, again, to perform some static analysis on your applications. And also, when you're building containers, right? So a lot of folks are now deploying applications using Docker containers or cloud type technologies and using Kubernetes. You definitely want to ensure that those containers are not, deployed with some severe or critical vulnerabilities, right? You want to take care of those. So again, right, we have the tooling and the ability to implement all of that kind of security scanning, vulnerability scanning type execution within the pipeline. And the developers are more, they're empowered and more vested in that process. So let's talk about securing pipelines now. I kind of touched on how, we can add execution, security type vulnerability execution to our pipelines, and why we should do that, and why developers should be involved in that process. But, we do have obstacles, no matter what you do with CI/CD, especially in platforms, right? It's still software, it's still a tool, and there's always going to be struggles, right? Especially in and around security. With our pipelines, we're generally, I would say, 90% of the pipelines I've touched or viewed or seen or know of, they require some form of integration, right? So, we have integrations into different services. Could be a database, could be an API service, it could be, I don't know, banking system, whatever that integration is. We have different types of integrations. And here's a nice list, right? So maybe your application and your pipeline has some form of code coverage tool, right? Ensuring that your applications conform to a certain standard. You're, again, right, running vulnerability scans within your pipelines. Maybe your pipeline is integrating with an API, database, cloud providers, right? There's all kinds of forms, and this is just a very small subset of things, but they're the more common ones regarding pipeline integrations, especially when you're like deploying, your software using this CI/CD automation. Infrastructure as code is really, really huge, and has a huge role in playing and helping with that automation and making it as easy as possible to not only provision infrastructure, but also to manage that infrastructure once it's deployed. So with all those integrations, right, within our pipelines, they require access, right? There's no way to unless you control the service, even then though, you still have to, gate those services or gate those resources with basically, credentials, access credentials, right? And those credentials come in many, many forms, right? So we have obviously OAuth, And this is a JavaScript group. So the JWT, right, JSON Web Tokens, those are really important, I'm sure, that you deal with them often. But right, this access, credentials can range in many, they come in many different forms, right? You know, from OAuth all the way down to like common username and password. But the issue with these access credentials, right, is I call them, the issue is that, you know, we have different names for everything, but I usually generally call them secrets when I'm talking about them in a general sense. So moving forward, I'm going to be talking about secrets. And basically, right, we understand that these secrets provide access, right? They provide the entry, the gateway to whatever service you're trying to use or to whatever data you're trying to access. And we have to protect those secrets, right? This is really important. This is, again, obvious stuff. But I can tell you, when you're integrating within pipelines, those secrets are generally not as protected as you would think, right? And if you have exposed pipelines and exposed secrets within your pipelines, then that equals, right, a potential for an exploited pipeline, meaning someone can gain access to that pipeline and perform some malicious acts. Or someone can gain access to those pipelines and unintentionally perform some damaging, right, acts, or execute some damaging processes within your pipelines, which could impact your code and your releases. So one of the main problems that I see with you know, pipeline integrations within the CI/CD platforms, and by the way, this kind of plagues a lot of platforms. Not you know, there's a wide range of platforms, CI/CD platforms and tooling out there, and they all kind of suffer from the same issues that I'm describing here. But basically, right, we're humans. We tend to try to you know, understand and remember secrets, right? Like passwords or some kind of token or something. Obviously, if it's a token, it's a little bit more difficult. But in any case, right, the issue with secrets and CI/CD pipelines is they're weak, or they're stale, they're old. I spoke with a customer a couple months back. You know, they haven't changed a secret. He told me he hasn't changed a secret for a service that he manages in 5 years since he started. So he's been working there 5 years. The issue with that is, right, you have this old, stale, probably weak secret. And when I asked him why that was, he said, well, he didn't know what that would break if he changed the secret, right? So he doesn't even, so he has a bigger problem than just weak, stale secrets. He has to he has a bigger problem in the sense that he doesn't understand his infrastructure quite yet, right? Because it was a legacy system that he kind of inherited when he started. Obviously, there's another problem though with secrets within the pipelines, right? They can be unmasked, and you know, the data is sitting there, the secret's sitting there, you know, in clear text. Obviously, unencrypted secrets is a problem, especially when you have you know, bad actors that can gain access, again, right, to your pipelines or your CI/CD platforms while they're running the pipelines, right? That could be a problem, and it could be a situation where, you know, it could get really nasty for an organization if any of this stuff ever gets out. So what I'm proposing here to solve this is basically implementing some form of policy within your organizations called, you know, I call it secrets management, right? So this isn't anything new. Obviously, to ensure that you're managing your secrets, I propose that, you know, you implement some sort of secrets management tools, right? These tools can sit in between in between your pipelines and the gated services, right? So when we're talking about secrets management tooling, these tools give you the ability to, you know, create strong random secrets, right? They generate this stuff for you. And then it also has the ability to auto rotate secrets. So you can set policies up within this automation to go ahead, or this secrets management tool, to go ahead and, you know, create a policy that says, let's say, yeah, I want to change the secret to my API, maybe an API endpoint that you have which is gated, change that secret every 15 minutes, right? So you only have a time to live for a specific set of tokens for 15 minutes, right? And again, the secrets management tool can perform all of this for you, as long as you wire it up and create that connection within your pipeline. So your pipelines will call out, grab these new secrets and then update the data store within the CI/CD platform. So with having a secrets management tool implemented and being used within your pipelines, you can also create granular access controls, which are really important for doling out privileges to users. And you could also dole out privileges to services, right? So if you have a service account with your secrets management tool, you can actually, say XYZ service has access to only, right, a really focused set of privileges, so that if anything ever happened, maybe a token got exposed or compromised, number one, if you set up a 15-minute policy, your time to live is 15 minutes. So you only have a 15-minute window for and it's a lot of time. I get it, especially when you're being exploited with automated tools. But you have a time to live for 15 minutes, and then you also, the damage or the blast radius for that damage or that exposure is very limited, right, and controlled to a specific service. So again, right, when you're implementing these tools and you're doling out credentials, you're able to put a fine granular filter into what those services have access to, which again shortens or minimizes the impact of an exposure or over an incident. It also gives you the ability to have auditability. So what I mean by that is, most of us are dealing with companies, or we're under regulatory type conditions where we have to provide information to regulatory organizations that have oversight over our software. And when you have that situation, these tools can actually help you, control, again, who has access, but it also can tell you what actually occurred, right? What kind of credentials were doled out and when and to who. And that's a really important piece of this, because now you have a record or a log of what was kind of being what transpired with those credentials and by who, right? So this is a really, really important piece to securing things as well, is not only controlling the resources, but also understanding how those resources were provisioned and used, right? So there's two pieces to that puzzle when you're talking about security. And that's basically it regarding securing your pipelines. So let's go ahead and do a quick recap. So with CI/CD principles, right? Again, write and commit code often to a shared repository, and if you can, test your code on every commit. And of course, the benefits of this is that you get fast feedback loops on what you're doing with your work, especially when you're updating code, right? You want to understand what's going on as quickly as possible. So if you have issues, you can fix them. With continuous deployment principles, right? We're just creating release artifacts and deploying those to the target environments. We're also validating the applications and services to ensure that they're functioning. And then, of course, implementing a monitor type process so that you can understand the state of the application. And some of us are actually have implemented some resiliency type functionality, which helps us recover those services if they begin to fail. Now, Devsecops, shifting security left, right? As I talked about, moving that process from like the very end of your pipeline all the way to the front, so that developers have eyes on the things that they need to have eyes on, and enables the security team to also just, lend their expertise when they need to, which is hopefully later on down in the pipeline, right before maybe a deployment, right? So it's kind of a little confirmation there. Implement app scanning and container scanning within your pipelines. Really, really important to ensure that you're releasing as bug-free code as possible, or as less vulnerable code as possible. Not all the times, right, that we're going to be able to release software with like 0 vulnerabilities, but they are different levels, right? So you have critical, severe, medium, low kind of statuses to those vulnerabilities. And occasionally, some of us release software with some higher severity type vulnerabilities. But the good thing is your security team may be okay with it because they have some way to mitigate against that in a different process. Also, with Devsecops, the intention there is to eliminate these artificial domain barriers, right? Meaning get rid of the, hey, it's not my job excuse, and everyone kind of is empowered to, take a little bit of stake or ownership within the security realm. Securing pipelines, the best advice I can give you is implement secrets management policies and tooling, especially in that context, right, where we're integrating into things. We want to make sure that those secrets we're using to gain access are as secure as possible. Integrate that security management tool and process into your pipelines. And then, right, the benefits are that you're generating strong random secrets and credentials, and creating auto rotation policies that can replace those secrets used in pipelines based off of whatever timeline or process that you create for your organization. And that's basically the end of my talk. I'm glad to have been here. I wish everyone well, and I look forward to our Q&A session shortly. Thank you.
Angel, what a fantastic talk. Hopefully everybody watching along at home will now have a far more secure deployment pipeline. Everyone, please join me in giving Angel a huge round the world round of applause. Angel's Q&A session will be starting any moment now, and I am fairly sure that you will have some follow-up questions after that talk. So please do join us, where we will be broadcasting that session over onto GatherTown. If you're watching along on YouTube, please keep your comments rolling in and the posts coming in on social media using the hashtag CityJS2021. Again, Angel, thank you very much for that amazing talk.
Okay,
all
awesome.
right, thanks.
Great talk, by the way. I really enjoyed it, and unfortunately I didn't get to see it because I was busy somewhere else in the conference. But
no worries,
I caught like a minute of it, and it looked really awesome. You've got great presence and automation, like CI is so important.
Yeah. I was tweaking it just like 5 minutes ago, but because I know the title is like JavaScript, but I wanted to let people know like this isn't going to be me showing you how to. It's more about concepts, because I think I know just from my interactions with the community, there's a lot of developers that are in this like bad predicament where like, they have like security team at their organizations, there's the whole thing. So I'm trying to educate people on like, hey, you don't have to operate that way, right? Like, so anyway, yeah, hopefully it resonated with some folks.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Great. So Angel, thank you again so much for your talk. We really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time out to do the Q&A. Q&A is my favorite part. We get to see everyone's kind of questions, and we get to dig deeper into your talk. So I'm glad you're enjoying it as well. So that's cool.
This is what I love. Like the Q&A pieces are the best.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have, I don't know if that's a question. Secrets and pipeline reminds me so much of, there's a link, No Secrets Environment Variables by Loran. Okay. That's I think a comment from Andre. So I mentioned to you before that I didn't see your talk. So just on that note, do you suggest putting secrets in environment variables or not?
Well, so most platforms do that, right? So okay, let's take a step back. If you're talking about in the context of CI/CD pipelines, most platforms have these mechanisms where you can define like a secret in an environment variable, because once those runtimes start, are created, provisioned, and start running your code, in the context of Circle CI, we actually keep your secrets, an environment variable tied to your project in the platform. Everything's encrypted at rest and in flight. And then once it hits the runtime, it has to be unencrypted, right, at some point. So that's kind of the process. And so they're already using them. Now, if you're in the context of, maybe you're a developer and you have your own local, environment, yeah, you can wire up your boxes. It's the same concept. It's just that the environment's different. But again, with CI/CD platforms, right now you're kind of multi-tenant, and things are, a little bit more risky, so to speak. And that's what I'm talking to is like, if you really want to lock things down, most platforms have pretty secure, mechanisms. We actually have in Circle CI a context variable type solution for when you want to lock things down within your teams. You know what I mean? So like in your version control system, maybe you have developers, operators, and whatever, and you have different environments. So you can actually create like environments for your dev environment and then lock it down to only developers, right? They don't have access to anything but that context, right? And then, so there's mechanisms. But yes, everything pretty much is an environment variable because it's the easiest way to integrate those values and those parameters inside of code, right? I mean, we use it day in, day out on our machines. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. No, that's really good. Thank you for that detailed response. So while we're waiting for people to write questions in one of the many chats, okay. I have another question. It's a bit controversial. So
love controversy.
That's
my jam. That's my jam.
But I'm really curious. So Circle CI, one of the most popular, CI platforms out there. GitHub Actions has come around recently. How has that affected, I suppose, how you do things? And, has it been like a friendly competition? Like, are you kind of, I don't know, trying to compete with, I don't know, plugins or flexibility or whatever it is?
Yeah. I mean, we've been around for a very long time. There's a reason, when Circle CI started out in the space, there was tons of competitors and platforms. If you look at the landscape today, it's very, very, it's been filtered out, right? So, and only the better ones kind of survived or surviving. We're doing okay. But, in regards to GitHub Actions, since you asked, those platforms are, GitHub is a code repository, right? Version control system platform. They've added, actions. Actions in general are just ways to create functionality. It doesn't have to be CI, right? So they can do many, many things, right? On your code, on your repos. My take on it is, we only focus at Circle CI, we only focus on CI/CD, right? And helping developers build very useful, valuable automation, right? To help get their release cycles down so they can just basically get their code and releases out as quickly as possible. Those other platforms, CI/CD is a feature to them, right? Like they just bolted that on because maybe their competitors, right? Their version control competitors have that feature. So that's how I view it. We are solely focused on CI/CD, right? Getting, again, developers, putting the power into the developers' hands and facilitating a true DevOps culture, right? So you need that concept, or you need the culture to be there. But once you have that, you can apply this Circle CI as your automation platform, right? To facilitate those processes. Again, they are making some strides, and I think it's okay. We need competition, right? But at the end of the day, again, they're bolting on these features because they're competing with someone else, in my opinion, not necessarily in the CI/CD space. And we're always adding new features. We're going to be announcing one on March 30th. I can't really say anything today, but there is a preview for a new feature that we're adding. So if anybody's interested, at Punk Data and Twitter or at Circle CI, and you can start asking.
You kind of answered my next question. My next question was, what features do you have coming out? So we're going to have to wait a few more days to find out what that is.
Yeah, like March 30th. It's going to drop on March 30th. It's going to be it's pretty exciting. Actually, I'm doing a live stream too. So we have our Twitch stream if you want to go check it out. I'll be doing a more technical, kind of stream on the features and showing you how to implement them. But yeah, I want to tell, let me see how I can tease it.
Well, there is a link in the chat from Zan. So thank you very much to your
yeah,
account.
that's my peer. Yeah, my buddy Zan. So
hi Zan.
Yeah, so like we've released a bunch of other things. Like we just have released our kind of new Android runtimes. So we've dramatically improved the build capabilities within our Android runtime. So now the emulation is much faster than it was before, and the mobile developers can now enjoy some speed in their emulation and in their builds. Actually, Jean is one of the main developer advocates that's working to help make the community aware of these changes. We've also introduced this concept of private runners, which basically enables our customers that have very special use cases and they have to run their workloads on customized hardware or inside a enterprise data center or something like that, right? Something that has to run in their environment, but you can still manage those workloads from the Circle CI, dashboard. So it's kind of like an extension of our cloud, but inside of somebody's data center or infrastructure. So awesome. we're definitely releasing a lot of new features, and we're trying to do this quickly, as well as our UI system. We've been slowly rolling out new UI type features. Sometimes they're rolled out to 10% of our users, and the team is getting feedback, so they're building it. They're doing it the right way, so they're not breaking things across the board. So I don't know, there's a lot of thought behind how we release, but I'm super excited to see how all these new features come out. And
it sounds really exciting. Yeah, sounds like you've had some awesome stuff come out recently and some more awesome stuff coming soon.
March 30th.
March 30th. Okay.
Yeah.
Not long, like 4 days, right?
Yeah. Well, the product manager made me promise not to, because I'll let it out, but it's all, March 30th.
Okay, no worries. I mean, you could whisper it to me here and no one else will know. No, I'm just joking. Okay, so I think last question, and I've just forgotten what it was. Oh yes, I remember what it is. Last question. At Circle CI, do you eat your own dog food? As in, do you use Circle CI to deploy Circle CI?
Absolutely. We have many pipelines. Admittedly, some of them are really, really optimized and efficient, right? So we are eating our own dog food, as you said. But then there's some pretty gnarly ones too that would need some work and need some love. I mean, I'll keep it real with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's normal, right? If you said, it's all perfect, everyone's going to be like, nah, that's not true. Like it never is. So
it's pretty interesting though, right? When you're building software, where you're building the software that builds your software, right? It's like a chicken before the egg.
It's like the Inception.
I look at talk to the engineering folks, and they try to explain it. And, even myself, I've been in this business a long time, and I'm like, but how I still can't get my hands around it, or my brain around it, I should say. But, it works, and we are doing it. So, but I think you have to, right? So if you're going to expect developers or anybody to use your products, you have to kind of use it yourself, right? Like and of course, we can also leverage other people's products as well. Like you mentioned, GitHub Actions. There's nothing wrong with running a Circle CI pipeline and performing some sort of function on your repo using a GitHub action from within a Circle CI pipeline, right? What's stopping you? I mean, I think your imagination is the only thing. Because we all have different needs and different situations. So I highly encourage people to, experiment, right? And figure out what happened, or what you can kind of innovate. But my whole point is, I think, we are under a lot of pressure as technology teams, developers, operators, whatever, to release whatever code we're writing as quickly as possible. And I think that's the right thing, right? Because when I was coming up in this business, yeah, it took, I could write some code and I wouldn't see it in production maybe 2 months later, right?
Yeah,
And this wasn't even like important stuff. It was just so slow because the process was just so manual and so, disjointed, right?
Yeah, now it's so much better.
Oh,
Unfortunately, we're out of time. So
oh
everyone,
man.
don't forget to go follow Angel on socials and Circle CI so you can find out the awesome and exciting features they got released in a few days and all the other amazing posts they're going to do. Also, don't forget that Circle CI does have a booth, and there are also some other sponsored booths as well. So do go check it out.
I'm gonna go there right now. So if you want to hang out with me and Jean, let's meet up there. Thank you so much, Eddie.
I'm folding my arms. You can do that's my third point. You stole it right out of my mouth. Yeah, go check out Angel at the booth right now afterwards.
Well, Jean is real quick. We're giving away headphones, so come on over and let's see what we can see if we get a lucky winner because they're like really good headphones too. I might want to put my name in that.
Awesome. I'm gonna head over there now. So thank you again so much for your talk and the Q&A.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll be back next year, right? In person. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Take care. We'll see you.
You too. Thank you. Bye.